Well, good afternoon, Amber. Thank you for joining me. We are all set up and live on Facebook and want to talk about what's going on in real estate.
Do this.
Awesome. Well, Amber, we always love having you here, so we're excited to be, talking to you today because I know she's got some awesome info and lots going on, and I'm going to just dive right in. So what Amber and I were just discussing like 1 minute ago was about, wow, it's September and still hard to get offers accepted. And we want to know why. Well, because real estate, as we know, is just going gangbusters, continues to do so. Our inventory rates, they're just so low. And what do we, so that drives up prices. I always got to go with my, demand goes up, inventory goes down, and prices go up. So in August, 35% of homes closed over their asking price in Phoenix metro area, and the sales are up nearly 19% year over year. September, when you start looking at where we are September, the second half of the year always sells less than the first half. We know that this year is not anything that is kind of the normal routine and the pattern of anything, but it's just wild to see what's been happening. Our sales prices are 16% up year over year. Healthy appreciations, 3%. Even at the national level, every market is pretty tight. There's a lot of really tight inventory. Increased the national sales price, according to Redfin, was saying we're up 11% year over year. Nationally, there's only 2 markets that have kind of flatlined with not increasing, and that's San Francisco and New York. And I'm just going to do a real quick screen share because I think it's just so interesting. Look at this, where we look at our kind of year over year change, and this is the whole country. Here we are, 46% down from where we were last year, and that's a lot. We'll be sharing this, but I thought this was a really interesting chart to be looking at. And our demand is up. It's 24% above normal. We've just got so many things happening that we know we've got a lot of pressure. One of the things too is Realtor.com does a housing recovery kind of index chart, and I'll share that really quick. Sorry, I gotta geek out on my charts here. This actually shows that we have recovered from pre-pandemic levels when you look at supply, demand, price, and time on market. So we really are having this. I mean, this is illustrating why our market's going so crazy, because of, the supply and demand, and houses are actually selling faster than, ever before. So all of this is happening, and then we're having the midst of a lot of conversations and questions on forbearance, and what is that? People are afraid that we're going to have a 2020 that was like 2005, and some people are having some PTSD, and trying to talk about, there is some, the market intensity feels the same, but the markets are not the same. And one of the questions a lot of people have is with forbearance, and initially it was projected that our forbearance levels would reach 30%. They didn't. We've actually been dropping for about 5 months straight on the total number of mortgages in forbearance. It's right at like 7% right now. Roughly 3.5 million loans are in forbearance. And a lot of people are coming out of forbearance. I guess in last month, according to the Mortgage Banker Associations, almost 10% of borrowers that were in forbearance came out, and by having permanent loan modifications. That's really kind of how they're able to come out. So there's, a lot of the lenders and servicing companies, they are really wanting to work with those borrowers to make sure they can stay in their homes. And then the next thing is where people are kind of freaking out and saying, oh, are we going to have this big giant foreclosure kind of boom? You know what I'm saying? Like a bunch of foreclosures hitting the market. And really, no, there may be a trickle. I mean, we can't say that they're going to be avoided, but we know that of that roughly 3.5 million loans that are in forbearance, we don't know for sure, but we think about 25% are still current. So that's going to be a nice chunk that they're not going to lose, be in contention of losing their house because their mortgage is paid. Now, one thing to also consider is, because we were just talking about that crazy appreciation, we know that we know that properties they're appreciating. I mean, if you bought in the last 6 months, maybe you'd break even, but really pretty much if you've owned it longer than 6 months, you have some equity. And even they say that 90% of all mortgages in the country have at least 10% equity. So there we know we're not going to be in that same kind of really awful situation where people are losing all this money, because if they go to sell, even if they are under pressure because of, things that happen, unemployment, stuff like that, they may have some pressure on them, but they can still do a regular sale and walk away with some money in their pocket. The average American, and this was as of Q1, average American homeowner is $177,000 in equity. So people are not going to be wanting that to go to foreclosure. They will be selling it. One of the things too also to consider is where our unemployment. Yes, we're at about 8.4%, and now last week we did see the continuing unemployment numbers. We're now down to just below 13 million, which is big improvement from that 20 million where we were not that long ago. And what also looks at some of the unemployment that I think is pretty interesting is when you start looking at the numbers where we know that the leisure and hospitality sector is what was hurt the most. That unemployment rate is over 21%. Like that really hurts. And a lot of those employees are renters, and I know we've talked about this, but they're not necessarily homeowners that are going to be in that foreclosure situation. But one thing I thought was interesting is of the jobs in the financial activities sector, which would include real estate, the unemployment rate is 4.2%. So that is actually almost considered fully employed, or where it's really strong. So again, we're going to be looking at that where we know a lot of the people within who are homeowners and things like that, they are employed. We've got 160 million Americans that do have their jobs. So that's kind of really feeding and fueling this fire. There's some other things that I know I spent a lot of time on the forbearance. I do want to show one other chart that I think is just interesting to really represent that forbearance has been dropping. Is if we look at this, we can see this arrow of where numbers of loans that are in forbearance is going down. So we're going to continue to watch this, but it is something that is not going to necessarily be indicative of a big foreclosure market. I don't really see that happening, and a lot of housing experts are not seeing that happening because of the amount of equity and the drop in the number of properties in foreclosure. Couple of interesting things, and one we've talked a lot about building and what that looks like, and how the builder sentiment is at all-time high. We're having more permits finally being pulled, more new homes being built, because we really desperately need that inventory. We've got a really huge challenge right now, and that is lumber. Lumber, I have seen some places, basically lumber has doubled. Some places are saying it's 170% increase in lumber costs since April, which, yeah, that's a challenge, because it's making it much harder for the builders to build, to acquire the lumber. And then of course that cost all gets pushed on to the consumer. So I know some builders in some parts of the country have actually had to stop building because they couldn't even afford to buy any lumber. And we've had things where the mills were shut down from the virus. We had just such a run on building has increased. And now with these big fires, Oregon actually has the majority of the lumber produced in this country. And it is even too soon. Major lumber companies have announced it's too soon to even know where we stand with the damage, because they can't even get into where that lumber is. And so, that's an issue. We have no idea what's going to come out of after these fires and what kind of situation we're in, but we'll be watching, because it will definitely directly impact the new builds and how long their turn times are and how much that costs. I'm going to say two more really quick things, and I know, Amber, you've got some really good information. This was super interesting too, is actually the number of young adults that are aged 18 to 29 living at home with their parents crossed the 50 percentile level or boundary as it's never done before. 1940 was the last time it was close to 50%, and we're actually at 52% now. And that's a lot of, with colleges being closed, with the unemployment, a lot of these, young people are moving home and living with mom and dad. And quite frankly, it's great that there's an option. Last thing, and I thought this was pretty interesting, is Opendoor actually, instead of going the route of an IPO to go public, has gone the route of what's called a, let me see if I can remember it. It's a special purpose acquisition company, or SPAC, or also known as a blank check company. Basically a company that is publicly traded already, but isn't a company. It's just exists on the stock market. They then merge with Opendoor, which is what is happening now. And the company is called, I have it written down somewhere. Let me tell you what it's called. Now, of course, I can't find it. It's like, oh, Social Capital 2. And so what they've done is they are now merging with Opendoor, and it's giving Opendoor the ability to be then traded on the public stock market without having to go through the IPO and that fiasco that WeWork went through. And, you know, there's a whole bunch of information behind it. I won't spend too much time on it, but it's interesting because what this has done is it's given Opendoor a $4.8 billion valuation. Even though the company's never turned a profit, they're working on it. One of the things that this will do also by putting them is it could give them access to about $1 billion in capital that they can, you know, as their plan is to actually enter. They're in about 21 markets right now. They want to be in about 100 markets in the next, say, 3 to 5 years. So they've got some very optimistic goals, and they're looking to expand. Here in Phoenix, their market share has actually gone down significantly. They did hit about 6% market share even in January where they were, and then in July it's 1.4% market share. I mean, we know, and Amber, this will be my segue to you, is it's hard to get an offer accepted. It's hard to get people to, you know, to say, yes, I'm going to accept your offer, especially when there's so few houses on the market. So I know Opendoor, like every other, you know, buyers struggling to get those offers accepted. So with that, I am going to hand it over to Amber to kind of pick that up and run with it, because I know you've got so much good information to share with us.
Yeah, awesome stuff as always. Such a wealth of knowledge, Sarah. But yeah, we all know that it's hard to win offers right now. We have clients that are getting discouraged and feeling defeated, and I think that right now we all need all of the tools in our toolbox that we can, and I believe that an underutilized option is financing, right? And making sure that your lender partner is educating your clients on what options exist to them, because we really want to make sure we've, you know, turned over every stone before we have someone shopping with a contingent pre-qual right now. So one of the things we're always looking at is, can they afford to buy before they sell? And we have the option of doing a recast, which allows them to buy with a minimum 5% down. And then after you've sold their home and they've extracted the equity, put that down against the loan so that we can restructure it for them at no cost with that larger principal reduction amount from the sale. The other thing that we're hitting home runs with is clients that are either asking above list price, and they're going in knowing that the home is probably not going to appraise for what they are paying for it, or clients that end up in a contract and the home doesn't appraise high enough, that we're able to structure a loan in a way where we can take, for example, a $15,000 gap of appraisal between the agreed upon sales price and appraised value, and turn that into a $2,000 or $3,000 expense for a client. And so if you have someone who wants to offer over the anticipated appraised value to win an offer, or has it coming in low, before you let that deal die or before they lose out on that offer, let us know, and I can help kind of coach you through what that option looks like, because it's kind of hard to explain, but it's an incredible tool to help our clients win offers right now, which is really what our job is.
Definitely. And you got to get creative right now, because it's hard.
Yes.
And that contingent thing, we're seeing so many right now, and it gets down to the wire.
Yeah.
So that's huge. And I think a lot of people don't really realize that they can use those different techniques to their benefit.
Yeah, they don't, especially if they've gotten qualified through a bank or a Quicken or something like that. That loan officer is not strategizing with them about what options do they have to help make sure they can shop non-contingent, or to help make sure that they can make up a gap, or, hey, did you know you could offer over appraised value to win this house if this is the dream home, and that I could turn that gap into a much lesser cost for you, and all those conversations that are really the lender's conversation to have. I think for a realtor, it's kind of an awkward conversation because it's really getting into their finances, and you're kind of in the dark as to what that looks like for them. But as a loan officer, we have all of that data. And so I can identify in a consultation which options I can present to the client, and presenting them in a way that they can understand, and that they then come to the realtor partner that much more educated and confident about making aggressive offers to win.
I love it. I love it. And that's what we need right now, especially if you're in that, you know, kind of bread and butter price point, that lots of offers still, even though we're not necessarily seeing 30 offers, we're still seeing 10. And, you know, how do you stand out among the crowd? So perfect.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, Amber, as always, great information. Totally appreciate you. We'll be talking again next week. And of course, if anybody has any particular questions on what we addressed today, or you'd like us to see, you know, to cover something else, let us know. We're always happy to address that.
Yes. Thank you, Sarah.
Awesome. Thank you
All
so
right,
much.
bye, everyone.
See you later.